On this episode of Outside of the Box, Christine talks to several of the competitors from September's NHRL event.
A lot of my success is not making huge changes. If I'm going to make a change, I want to understand the exact reason why I want to make it and understand what could go wrong. I don't understand all of the physics that make Mako a success. So if I'm going to make a change, I want to, understand it fully. Just getting tons of stick time just allows me to pilot Mako better and understand more of how it works.
The point at which it transitions from specific issues to general broad issues that affect pretty much every robot, that is, in my eyes, when a robot design transitions from good to great.
I was playing it cautious, and then he got the weapon up. I went at a kind of an angle, and he actually hit one of my weapon belts, so if I wasn't careful enough, he could have actually hit both weapon belts, and I would have been down a weapon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Outside of the Box. And, it's just not too long ago, we had the September NHRL event, and it was very exciting. Lots of really amazing matches. And I think, most people shouldn't be surprised by this point how well a little robot named Mako did at that event. But I have Julian here to talk about September. So welcome back.
Hi, thank you for having me. As Christine said, I'm Julian, the builder of Mako, among less successful and cool bots. But Mako kicked butt and finally qualified. I don't know if that's if we're going to lead up to that, but I've been working hard, and the goal for the year was to qualify, which was a lofty goal, and this was literally my last chance, but I pulled it out and succeeded.
Real quick before we talk about September, I think coming off of the heels of what you were able to do at Mass D was certainly, I would say, I think a confidence booster that Mako had the capability to do something like this. So I just want to talk about the Mass D event. And did that surprise you at all, or was that the result that you were expecting?
I will say it was a surprise, but I go into every tournament, every match, like, I want to win this. So I won't say surprised, but I'm definitely appreciative, and it was awesome that I was able to. And as you know, there was some hard hitters there. There was Red Panda, there was Chubby Unicorn, even Sir Spinny, who is underrated like Mako. I had to face them in the finals, so getting wins off of all of them is just incredible.
Yeah, you certainly have put a lot of work into that robot. We were talking about it really not that long ago on this show. What had you done just the past couple of months, from Mass D on leading into September to kind of get it really ready?
So what's funny is leading up to Mass D, Mako went on a little bit of a weight loss program. So I could run a 4S battery instead of 3S, even though I wasn't running at 400 miles per hour at Mass D, because NHRL is really the only place you could do that. I was still testing 4S. And actually, my motors exploded 2 or 3 times in the earlier matches because I was running on 4S. So it's still it's spectacular that I was able to still pull out those wins through control and aggression. So I will say, since that, leading up to NHRL, I didn't even run 4S. I was back down to 3S, and I think it might sound weird to some people, but a lot of my success is not making huge changes. If I'm going to make a change, I want to understand the exact reason why I want to make it and understand what could go wrong. I don't understand all of the physics that make Mako a success. So if I'm going to make a change, I want to, understand it fully. And just getting tons of stick time. I go to Mass D whenever I can, go to G-Stroll whenever I can. It just allows me to pilot Mako better and understand more of how it works.
Well, it certainly has been paying off. For September, I mean, I know for me, it like because of the fact that like, you know, we chat quite a bit and stuff like that, and I follow what you've been doing with Mako. I had really high hopes, and was, you know, really like, please let Mako qualify this time. But talk about the day for you, and just like the matches that you had and kind of what got you there to the end.
Right. So the first match that I was supposed to have was actually against Flamethrower Terrible Terror, I think it's called. They actually couldn't pass safety. But if you see Mako covered in gold tape, that is why. So I was fortunate enough to get a forfeit in the first match. My second match was up against Raid Zero, which is a very interesting bot. It's like geared vertical spinner. It kind of reminds me of Cobalt. But I was able to get in there early and just get like the killer shot, which killed their electronics. So after that, I was into the tournament, and another turn of fortune. Is that the phrase? I don't know. Another fortunate event is that I got the bye in the first round. And then, if I'm remembering correctly, my next match was up against Yes Chef from Alex Pezza. He's a veteran. He's one of my favorite buddies at this event. We had a killer match at a G Scroll a long time ago, and this was another really killer match. His weapon broke, but before that happened, he was doing a good job of keeping me on the ropes and really being crazy and spinning and flying all over the place. I really appreciate his fighting style. He really goes all out. But after that, I was supposed to face Chris Capps, friend of the show. But I think he had some problems, so his robot couldn't actually couldn't make it. So another fortunate event. So I will say Mako sort of had a bit of a lucky path to finals, to qualifying, but we're not going to dwell on that. Oh yeah, one thing I should mention is as soon as the brackets get posted, what do? The first thing I look at is my first opponent, Raid Zero. The next thing I look at is who do I have to beat to qualify? Because that really is my goal. That was like the ultimate goal for the year. And who was it? Endpoint. And people who follow NHRL who are on the Discord know that is Sean's upgrade to Strike Point. And it's a shuffler, and it's got a 2-pound mini bot. It was kind of like leading up this thought to be like, this thing is going to kill everybody. Oh man, what? He's got a 5-pound robot. It's going to be real hard. And I was saying the same thing. Oh man, of course, Mako has to fight that to qualify. 2 overheads. He's from the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. But yeah, sure enough, made it that far, and that was a very, very interesting match. One thing that's funny that the live stream didn't catch is before the match even started, Dima, my sister / minibot driver, and Peter, who was his minibot driver, our bots kept switching sides because we wanted to go mini to main bot, and they want to do the same thing. So we kept switching sides, and we did it like 3 or 4 times, us like looking across at each other and laughing. Eventually Gwen was like, guys, please stop. But I think we thankfully the orientation side by side that we wanted. We charged up. Sean spun up his weapon. I spun up my saw, and we kind of collided. I was lucky enough to cut his wires. He smashed into actually some top armor I had, ripping it off. So if his weapon was continuing to function after that, Mako was kind of in trouble. It was the top plate that covers all that juicy unorganized stuff, including a battery. So my silly top armor, which was actual like a saw I bolted on, which is on brand and silly, saved me for 1 hit. It was the 1 hit I needed. And then actually early on too, I think maybe even during that first hit, my saw partially smoked. So for the rest of the match, I was not attacking much because I knew at that point his weapon's not going to work. If my weapon works during functionality tests and I can continue to control this match, then it's won. And big props to Dima for being a kick butt mini driver, especially in that match, having to go up against a 2-pound Supreme Ruler with a little 1-pound guy. And I barely had to worry about the Supreme Ruler at all, which speaks to just how well she did, just allowing me to tussle with Strike Point and landed a few like good suplexes and stuff like that. It was tons of fun. And I remember after that match, pretty sure I won, but you never know. Dima and I were walking upstairs and she was like, oh, let's wait down here. And like we turned a corner and it was very cool because there was a bunch of builders there and staff like sitting there waiting to hear the result, waiting to hear the result. And when Mako was announced as the winner, just having that like wave of emotion from my peers, from Dima, from a lot of people I respect. I don't want to name names because I'll forget someone surely, but it was just an incredible moment. Like I don't know if that thing when you die, your life flashes before you. That'll be one of those just overwhelming memories. It just it was amazing. Yeah. And what was my reward for defeating Sean? It was to go up against Jameson Go. So walked upstairs, bolted on the wedge, and I'm just like, what the heck? It's a terrifying robot. Mako does not have a good history against horizontal spinners. But I think I even said it in the interview. I like fighting with Mako because no robot likes to get hit on, with a big saw. So if I land the correct shots, land a good shot, you never know what can happen. And in that fight, there was actually an unfortunate twist of fate where Silent X, or is it Silent X or Silent Spring?
Silent Spring.
Silent Spring, sorry. Silent Spring smacked the minibot and sucked up a piece of side armor, totally locking up the weapon and lifting it up off the ground. And now me watching, I didn't know what the heck was going on. All I knew was Silent Spring's not moving. So I went for a couple hits and then backed off. And unfortunately, the NHRL rules are that they don't separate disentanglements like that. We saw that at teams with Beetlejuice and Eruption. I think Eruption, but regardless, it was a very unfortunate way to win. In the moment, I didn't even know what the heck happened until I got upstairs. Like you can see me like fall down on my knees, like what the heck is going on? So getting that win is bittersweet, because Jameson, like trying to explain to my non-robot friends, it's like JMO is like the Tom Brady of robots, and that's not even exaggeration. Like he comes in and qualifies like with whatever robot, whatever he wants. He shows up to the grand finals in all 3 weight classes, and like it's a story like, is he going to win all 3 of them? And it's believable, and there's a good chance he'll do it this year. It's just insane, but 1 in a million lucky BS that Mako got that win. And I hope we meet again because I think I said to JMO already, it's a disservice to both robots because Mako didn't really get a win. Silent Spring didn't really get a loss. So hopefully we can tangle again, and he will probably destroy Mako, but I will go down swinging the saw. I'm rambling a lot. I apologize. But after that, I'm in the grand finals, and that's up against Peter Garnache of Repeat Robotics with his beater bar, which up until now, I didn't even realize until afterwards, is undefeated at NHRL. It came in January, I think, but it forfeited against Repeater, his own robot. So it hasn't even lost at NHRL. But I won't say I'm confident, but beater bars are kind of straightforward for Mako. Just kind of keep him in front of me and hopefully land that big shot. But this is another thing that the stream didn't catch. I loaded in Mako, the doors closed, and then I undid my kill switches, and right away Mako's arm went straight up in the air. The saw went to 50%, and I could not, I'm sitting there with my controls while that's happening. Obviously, you never want a robot to be spinning its weapon when it shouldn't be. So I'm trying to figure out what the heck is happening, messing with my controller. Eventually I turned the kill switches back on to kill the robot. Once the saw spun down, they allowed me to power cycle the robot, because at that point, that's like the only thing I can do. So I power cycle the robot, get it back into the corner. And here's something funny that the commentators did mention. They were like, "Oh, he didn't even do a twitch test. That's odd. Normally, I would want to do a twitch test." And the reason I didn't is because I figured what's going to happen is the saw is going to go straight into the air and it's going to spin at 50% as soon as I undo my kill switches. And unfortunately, that's what happened. So as soon as the match starts, Peter slammed into me, and Mako is very top heavy when it's got its big saw on. So he's just punting me around. Anytime that you see like my arm going back, that's actually me reactivating my kill switches. So yeah, so it wasn't like, oh, I can only move the servo a little bit. It's like, no, I can either turn the robot on and off in a weird sort of way. So Mako was floundering, pun intended, for like 2.5 minutes. But I didn't get knocked out. And even towards the end, I realized, oh, there's this button I don't use in my transmitter, which brings down the arm super slowly. And it's funny, in like the last 10 seconds, I remember that and just got like that moment of defiance where it's like, I know you just beat the crud out of me, Peter, but I still want to bring my arm down, even though there was nothing behind it whatsoever. So Peter, whooped me, took first place. It would have been an even bigger Cinderella story if Mako had taken the dumpster. Like just saying that is incredible. But yeah, I think things have a way of sort of evening out. I got a 1 in a million win over JMO, and then in the finals, it was actually a transmitter glitch, which kind of cleared out all of my custom curves somehow. So that meant, once they're on, the endpoint was 0-0 for everything, for my arm and my saw. So that meant all the saw could do was spin at 50%, and all the arm could do was sit right there. But if now that I know that, I'm going to have backups on my transmitter. And on the stream, you even hear Adam, I think it was talking about, there's matches where he's had to like reprogram robots on the fly. So even though I lost, it's a learning experience, because next time I will hopefully understand what the heck's going on, and I could reprogram everything, go to a backup. But unfortunately, once the match is on, you don't have time to like start fiddling with your controller. I'm trying to make Knuckle Sandwich not kill me. And yeah, so that's sort of lame, especially because a lot of people, that might be the first time they've seen Mako. It's like, what the heck? The robot just got tossed around for 3 minutes. It's so top heavy. It's on its head the whole time. But that's okay. That's just gonna make the comeback even sweeter. So maybe I'll get my chance at revenge against Knuckle Sandwich one day.
Yeah, so fun story about that. I could have actually told anybody that Knuckle Sandwich was going to be a tough robot, because I actually fought it in January as a grudge when Destiny was driving it, and that robot did more damage to me than any robot that I've ever fought against, even Loophole. So I knew it was going to be tough, and Peter is a great driver as well, but I definitely was pulling for you in that one, and it's just unfortunate when you have that one little thing go wrong, and that's not a robot that you want it to go wrong against.
And after saying all of that, that's if Mako was working better, it's possible Peter would have whooped my butt even more. He had some killer top armor hidden underneath his bread. So even if Mako was working right, that was going to be a tough hill to climb regardless. So hats off to Peter, hats off to Knuckle Sandwich.
Yeah, for sure. Well, now that you've done that, I mean, you said that, October, you're going to be, not having Mako there, but obviously, hoping that Dima can qualify as well, I'm sure is the goal.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Now looking ahead to finals, is there anything that you're looking to do, or like how you're going to prepare for that?
I think back to that old saying, it's like a dog trying to catch a car. Once it catches the car, it doesn't know what to do with it. It's like, now that I'm in finals, it's like, oh crud, now I have to get ready to face the top 23 or whatever other robots. But how do I say this without sounding crazy? I'm very revenge driven in a way. So I would love to get a chance at any robots who've beaten me. Jelly Baby, the greatest challenge, took out both Dima and I. Knuckle Sandwich actually took out both Dima and I at this tournament. So I'd love to get a shot at them. I would also love for Red Panda or Chainsaw Kitty to get a shots at me. It's just looking at the whole field, there's tons and tons of good robots. And I know Monkfish is coming in October. I'm assuming they're qualifying. And they whooped my butt at G-Scroll. So if I could get revenge against them, that would be tremendous. But really, it's just like you read down the list. Every robot is insane. Sometimes I feel out of place, but I'm gonna keep showing up and kicking butt until I believe I belong. Oh, and Clyde. The flamethrower that's just gonna melt me alive. There's just yeah, tons of crazy robots.
Yeah, exactly. As long as it's not the giant sentient AI evolved version of Clyde, you don't want to fight that.
Any of no. You know what? Now that I'm talking, I don't want to face any robot there. Like it's ridiculous.
Honestly, though, like I have had a lot of faith in Mako all year, and I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I personally think you belong there just as much as anybody does, and I'm really excited to see what Mako is going to be able to do in the finals. I have to ask this because, like, again, this is going back to, you're very humble about your robot, but are you aware at how many people are scared to fight Mako?
I'm becoming aware. It's funny because like leading up to this event, we prepared for a flamethrower by wrapping my robot in foil. Dima and I both prepared for Spitfire, the crazy drone. And as we're doing all these things, I'm thinking like, that's what other robots have to do for Mako. They're like, oh great, got to get the crazy top armor config ready. So getting people off their game, getting people to worry about their top armor instead of maybe worry about the rest of the robot. Yeah, I'm slowly realizing how much of a weapon that can be. So yeah, I still don't. Like every other robot is still way more scary than Mako, though. Come on, you've seen the lists.
I've seen the list, but I guess maybe it depends, like what fear you have of robots to fight may depend on what your robot's personal weaknesses are. And I'm my robots are very tanky all the way around, except on the top. So Mako would split my robot in half.
It's one thing that I've discussed with Dima is that a lot of times the more the better designed robots, a lot of times they don't have the option to add more weight or add like a half-inch of armor. Whereas, the less refined robots have, whatever, I can just add half an inch of armor, add half a pound of armor. So that is certainly an interesting aspect to Mako because against most robots, you don't have to have crazy top armor. So I think as of now, I'm the only top attack robot there. So if there's 20 other people worrying about Mako, then I've already won in a weird sense. Weird, moral victory sort of way.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to be really excited to see, how Mako does in finals. I'm sure you'll do great. And like there's just so many good robots that are going to be there that for, people who aren't planning on watching it, if you're not, I don't know what you're doing, because you need to watch it. It's going to be just amazing fights one after the other. So
let's get Turbo Fiend qualified and me versus her, first and second in finals.
Hey, that it could
That's-
happen, and
I-
let's will it into
There
existence.
you
If you're watching this episode, we have still more to come to talk about September, but very excited for Mako, and thank you, Julian, for joining me on this segment.
Thank you very much.
And we're back. And so now for this segment, I'm really excited because if anyone remembers the first episode that I ever did with G Scroll, there was Beckett here who was part of that episode and was talking a big game. And I think that I knew at that time, I was like, this kid seems pretty confident. So I think that we're going to see big things in the future. And we certainly did in September at NHRL. So Beckett, welcome you and your dad, Matthew, back to the show.
Thank you. Would like to clarify, we are past the overconfident phase. Now we're in the social anxiety phase. So that's great.
Yeah, I mean I guess it ebbs and flows at that point. But first of all, before we get into September, I just want to talk about like the year in general for you and your robot, like leading up to that. Like, how did you feel about the September event? Did you think that you were going to do so well?
Well, with our 3-pound Dimachaerus, it has really just been especially in the early stages, like figuring out like what is going wrong, how do we improve that, and how do we improve that efficiently so we have like a very visible improvement in the next competition. We've been mostly running Dimachaerus at NHRL. 3 NHRL, right?
Yeah, it's the third. That was the third
NHRL, NHRLs. What's the plural?
NHRL. I think that's the proper plural.
Yeah. We had been iterating the bot a lot since we first created it. The last 2 competitions, not counting September, we had been pretty drastically plagued by battery issues. And this time around, we actually have seemed to move past those really drastic issues where the battery would just like consume itself halfway through a fight.
Yeah, I think we last in the last one we were using the first event that we used the 4-in-1 ESCs. It was fine. We had other problems, but the second event we lost a battery every single match, and so it was using the same electrical system. So
yeah, it is a combination of the drive demanding a pretty large amount of energy and taxing the ESC, combined with the weapon simply just drawing way too much power. Like our weapon was too powerful.
yeah, I think it was the battery didn't have high enough C rating on it too. So
So like every fight, puffed up, went boom.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that the things that we learned from those fights were that you held your own for a while against Caldera. You had a good set of matches in the last one, so we knew the core robot was good.
Yeah, didn't we also beat Shred, bro?
Yeah, and you were driving. That was the first NHRL, was that one.
Yeah,
but
that was a different event, I think.
Yeah, but we knew that that it could perform. It was just about making sure all those little things, and there's still more little things, but just getting rid of all of the failure modes, and then
yeah, once you start tackling the niche failure modes, that allows for a lot of refinement with the development process, because once you are targeting down the specific issues that your bot, your design uniquely, or well, not necessarily uniquely, but the specific issues your bot is facing, the point at which it transitions from specific issues to general broad issues that affect pretty much every robot, that is, in my eyes, when a robot design transitions from good to great.
Yeah, you get to start worrying about the little things, and you got to have bigger bigger ideas, you know, than like, why did my robot catch on fire? So
Spontaneously, no
yeah,
less.
yeah. Well, I guess that is a highlight from this September, is the only battery we did lose was my fault, because when I was turning it off, I accidentally stuck the actual Allen wrench, through a hole that I wasn't supposed to, and actually poked the battery, and I couldn't figure out why it wasn't turning off.
You little rascal.
And I realized this was after the match was over, and then it started smoking. So note to self, put black tape over the holes that you're not using. So that was a learning that we got.
Little footnote about that incident. The battery completely burned itself out, but the rest of the robot was fine. Like the chassis was like almost unscathed. Like Dolce can have its battery explode and it's still like not scratched.
It was a little melted.
It was a little melted around the battery casing, but like otherwise there was no damage.
It's pretty good.
Like I was very surprised. Like a lithium ion battery, which if I remember correctly, the TSA has on its list of dangerous explosive you should definitely keep tabs on. One of those caught on fire, and the robot was.
I don't think it was drivable though.
I mean, the battery was gone. Drivability is kind of out the window here.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But yeah, it was a great event. I feel like we did sort of tick off some of the boxes. The electrical system worked great. We switched from
asterisk.
Yeah, well, there is an asterisk in that, but
we'll get to that later.
Yeah, the new ESCs that we used they did exactly what they were supposed to. The new weapon blade that we designed for this event was great, because the previous one was a little too heavy.
Yeah.
We needed to lose a little bit of weight out of it, but
I also think the new weapon bar was like more effective. Like it was just a really optimized design.
Yeah, it's got a nice rake angle on it. It did a great job making contact with all the other robots that you face. So we're going to keep that. We're not going to change that. But yeah, I think it was the only other thing that we ran into was what you probably saw at the very end.
Yeah.
Against the match with Knuckle Sandwich was when we had two problems. Our forks got flipped up in that match at the very beginning. But there was a little bit of a 1-2 punch that we took, and the second one, I think it was a weapon-to-weapon hit, and the robot just turned off. So,
what happened, or at least our best guess, but it's probably right, as to what happened, was that there was an electronic brownout. Basically, we took the robot back to the test box, turned it off, turned it on. Went through all that. It worked perfectly. So what had happened, we think, is that weapon-to-weapon exchange that I was talking about sent electrical backshock throughout the rest of the electronics and turned them off. The reason that we didn't call for an unstick in that fight is because, like, it was just immediately apparent that the robot was completely dead. Like, no wheels were driving. The weapon was not turning. I turned off the controller and turned it back on during the countdown. Nothing happened. It was dead.
Yeah, but I think overall it was an amazing event.
It was an amazing event.
Yeah.
Ooh. Loved every second of it.
Yeah, it definitely was. And it's so funny because I remember, like, you know, especially in the 3 pounds, there's so many robots at Norwalk. And I remember before the event refreshing myself and looking through the list of, you know, bots that were going to be competing. And I saw Dimachaerus, and I was just like, you know, and kind of thinking to myself, knowing our prior conversation, especially, that I'm like, this may be a robot that people like sleep on and don't necessarily think is going to be a threat to be there in the end. So at least for me, I really wasn't surprised to see the robot in the top 4. I know you talked about the fight with Knuckle Sandwich, but like generally throughout the whole day, like your other matches, were there any highlights for you, or kind of how were you feeling as you went along in the bracket?
Wow. There were a lot. Like every single fight had something going for it. This event, the first fight against Catch-22, pretty well designed horizontal. That was the first time we had like competed at all in a while. We had taken a pretty extensive break from combat robotics as a whole for about six, 7 months. Like school, bunch of other factors. The fight against Catch-22, it had been a while since I had competed, while since I drive too. Like I hadn't really driven all that much since then, so I was just wondering like how easy it would be to sort of get back into things. The Catch-22 fight was definitely it was definitely a we are so back moment. The Intolerance fight was really, really fun. They have a really, really nicely designed bot. Weapon very scary. That was just a really fun fight. Like parts flying. There was. I think I like roofed the mini bot in the first 2 seconds. So that was fun. Great people, great robot. Intolerance is probably that's not the last you're gonna see of it. It's a well designed.
They had really
robot.
cool wheels on that.
Yeah,
robot too.
the wheels were nice. Cloud9 was like it was a difficult fight. Like Cloud9, and this is something that I'm going to like pretty heavily touch on. Cloud9 is a scary robot. It's a Peter Bar kit pretty much, except they have this really, really nice blue custom weapon. A custom blue beater bar. And the driver on Cloud9 is really good. Like that was their first event, the team's first event. It was some of the best driving that I've ever seen from like anyone in combat robotics, period. Like it was very good. Like
she had some problems with the bottom of
Yeah.
the robot dragging.
yeah, there were issues with like the forks and the bottom of the robot sort of dragging on the ground, and that was affecting their mobility a bit. It was still driving insanely well. Like if that bot had not been having mobility problems, we
Yeah.
probably would have lost.
I think some of the most damage you took all day was in
Yeah.
the back corner of your robot.
They ripped like a
Yeah.
pretty big chunk of the back off. Like we didn't suffer much like physical damage at all. But Cloud9 probably delivered the biggest hit any robot.
It came really close because it
It almost ripped one of our wheels off.
Yeah.
It
was
the weapon is scary, the driver is scary. Cloud9 is
watch
a
out for
bot
that
to
one.
watch out for. They fixed their mobility issues and they're top cutting. I'm calling it right now. Cookie Crumbler that was the first fight. Dimachaerus had made it properly on stream at 1. We at the last event, we did have a fight on stream against Kill It With Fire. Great fight, great guy. Kill It With Fire is a epic robot. We ended up losing that fight due to said battery issues. And just the whole electrical setup and battery just deciding to say adios at about the 2-minute mark. It was still a great fight. But I mean, part of you just kind of wants to like, you want to deliver your best performance on stream. And having your battery go bye-bye at the 2-minute mark, it's not really an impressive way to go out, all things considered. It was still a great fight. Kill It With Fire was really, really fun to fight.
The Cookie Crumbler was the first that fight came out, and it was. I have to go back and watch the video because I feel like there were a couple exchanges in the very beginning, and I can't tell what happened, but
the I was paying a lot of attention during that fight because Cookie Crumbler was a robot that
scary robot.
I was pretty worried about because I mean, we have a pretty good matchup against beater bars, but Cookie Crumbler is a really, really well-made one. It had been doing really, really well, got pretty far in the bracket. So I was pretty pensive during the opening parts of the fight, and what I noticed is after the first 2 exchanges, which had been around like their right weapon linkage, where the weapon met
the axle,
around the right part of that, sort of near their wheel, but a little to the left. There was like a sort of like a slight double hit that we ended up delivering to that with the second exchange, knocking them way back. And I noticed as they were driving back towards us, the weapon was not spinning and it had been like tilted downward at an angle. Like, if I'm remembering correctly, the weapon was tilted downward.
Yeah, I think the lock nut that held the axle on had been removed. I just don't know if it was a failure of the lock nut. We actually had that happen to us once.
We probably did not rip the weapon straight out.
No, I don't think we
unfortunately. But it was honestly more than anything, probably a bit of a lucky break. The hit right before that, we had won the weapon exchange, so the fight probably could have gone either way. We ended up winning that fight, moving on. The basics fight, I was terrified. Because a lot of things going through my mind during, before, and after the basics fight. I was very nervous. Basics is a very, very optimized robot. It had been doing incredibly well. Very small, very compact. Been delivering some pretty nasty hits all day. And I was nervous reasonably, but also because winner of that fight got to qualify, and I mean it's qualifying. I was nervous. For a lot of different reasons, I was worried the bot was gonna get ripped apart. Qualifying was on the line.
It's a little bit different vibe when you've got more weighing on that fight than just progressing. So
yeah, definitely. Like the first 10 or so seconds of that match, they were winning the weapon exchanges. You can see that very visibly on stream, and I was like, my heart was pounding. I managed to turn the weapon up to max and sort of connect really well with their side and start juggling them. Ended up ripping like half their entire armor off. And I feel like that's the point the fight sort of swung in our favor. Like we were able to win the fight from there. But it took a lot of like precision playing.
You still got a great pin on you though, like right in the middle of that.
It backed up straight into me, got a pin, like very serious drive. I mean, basics again, definitely a big robot to look out for.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we should have had an indication that the forks needed some work, because that was the reason why. If you look in the video, Dimachaerus sort of like was stuttering a little bit, couldn't get its drive figured out in the beginning. It was because one of its forks had gotten flipped up a little bit and it was dragging on the ground. So that was affecting, I think, your drive. And when you turned the weapon up, that sort of like vibration helped knock that down, and then you had control again. But that was a tense moment in the beginning of that match.
That it was. We moved on from the basics fight into our last fight of the night against Knuckle Sandwich. Very great robot. Peter Grenache, great guy. He was pitted like right in front of us when we had to move pits. So he was right there. We bantered. It was a lot of good fun. One sort of like little tiny thing that I would like to touch on before we get to the actual fight details. I don't want this to go too long, but I also just I feel like this deserves a little bit of recognition. So we were behind the bleachers getting ready to do our walkouts. It was cool. And Peter and I think one of the refs are chatting, and then they both just have this epiphany. Okay, and they're just like, there was like a folding chair just resting on the wall. And Peter was like, just like doing this behind the bleachers. It was like, what if I just like whipped out the folding chair and just sat on it? They were like practicing it behind the bleachers. Like they had like walked a couple steps back and were like flicking out the chair and like leaning back on it. And I was just like trying to suppress like wholesome laughter the entire time. Like it was wonderful. And yeah, when they did their walkout, they whipped out the chair. The audience loved it. Everyone loved it. It was incredible. We need to start bringing a folding chair.
You need to start planning your walk-on strategy. Like
yeah, no, it's an intimidation tactic. Trust me.
I know you wanted that fight to last a little bit longer. It was a little short. You know, even if
Yeah.
you get completely destroyed, it's nice to be able to be destroyed over like a full
Yeah.
couple minutes. But yeah.
Having Robobot randomly go poke you in the middle of the fight, not fun. The knuckle sandwich fight, a lot of fun, but there isn't a whole lot to talk about that we haven't already covered aside from like the brownouts. Knuckle sandwich, very, very good bot.
Was it hard for you to like, because I know like qualifying is great, but to get that
Qualifying's
close
great.
to going to the finals and
Yeah,
not
it was difficult, and like I would have been completely fine with the robot just getting completely ripped apart because that's what the sport is all about. It just stings in a really different way to have the robot just randomly and unceremoniously die to something you did not even consider beforehand. The salt, the salt in the wound bit of it is that we had ordered a part from Peter to prevent that, like before the event started. He was like, "Okay, yeah, you can pick it up at NHRL."
I didn't pick it up on Friday, so we didn't even have a chance to
Yeah,
install it. So
we didn't think we'd need it. But Murphy's Law. It haunts NHRL like the ghost of the
Christmas past. I don't know. Yeah, we
ghost
have
of something.
Yeah, we have a solution moving forward. So we
Yeah.
and I guess that's as you start to face bigger and like more impressive robots that have pedigrees like that, you have to deal with problems that you didn't have to deal before. But
Yeah.
so you have to deal with the grind, the being able to make sure that your robot can sustain all of this activity for as many matches as it has to fight, and then
Yeah.
you end up with some of these exchanges that are way bigger than you ever had before. So it's just a process.
Yeah. All in all, it was a great event. Like, every time we go to NHRL, it's just always such a wonderful experience. Like, everybody there is absolutely incredible. The interface for everyone there, whether they be like visitors, people just like coming to see the robots set each other on fire and sublimate, whether it's them or the builders in the pits that are putting in all the sweat and work and elbow grease, that I admittedly was not because I am a lazy sod. But
You drive,
we have a nice dynamic. The experience at NHRL is just so wonderfully crafted, no matter what part of it you're part of. And no matter which route you are going through, when you make your visit to NHRL, it is still one of the most worthwhile things you can do, in my opinion. I would highly recommend for anybody watching, listening, to at least go and visit at least once. It's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And speaking of NHRL experiences, how are you feeling about finals and what is your plan to prepare for that? Because, we've talked about facing some scary robots, and finals is likely to be nothing but scary robots.
Yeah. So prepping for finals, there are a couple things on our schedule of robot destruction that we are hoping to achieve at some point along the line. We're working on a new rail profile. It's not super optimized right now, and there's like this one tiny bit that could be like a little more optimized, save like a little bit of weight, but like every little bit matters, especially when we're like juggling with configurations. Speaking of configurations, and this isn't necessarily something for finals, but it's just something in general that we had been preparing but never got to use at September. Were two configurations for two types of robots that we were not well equipped to face. One were big like plow robots, like the Sawbots, that sort of build. Mako specifically. We had these like special, like really big wheels. They were like about this big.
Huge. Yeah.
They were big.
Not quite huge size, but pretty big.
Yeah, they were big. The idea was that just simply drive over the big forks. They can't push you around if they can't fully get under you. And if nothing else, the plow would end up serving as a ramp so we could feed the weapon directly into the saw arm. The only issue with those big wheels was we would drive forward and the robot would flip on its face and invert itself, and it could not invert back. So there's this really specific way we ended up having to like drive it while testing so that we wouldn't tip over. We never ended up getting to use those wheels. A little bit of a shame. We also had a drone set up for Spitfire, where we, instead of having like a weapon shaft, we just rigged up a servo and a couple linkages attached to this really, really long acrylic pole with like a little like pickaxe thing at the top, in an attempt to just sort of like snag Spitfire without like permanently tipping and inverting ourselves. I do not know what would have happened had we had to face Spitfire.
Yeah.
I honestly would have rather faced Knuckle Sandwich than Spitfire.
Well, that's Peter knocked out Spitfire before he faced you, so you didn't have to worry about it.
Is pretty impressive what Peter pulled off. Like, I am what some people might call a creative man, but I don't think I probably would have come up with using your own robot as a projectile and knocking the drone out of the sky. Like, it is only combat robotics spurs that kind of on the moment thinking. Honestly, a pretty apt comparison might be NASCAR, but halfway through the race, the pit team just decides to strap a jet engine unit to the top of the car.
Yeah.
Well,
I think, you mentioned all the other robots that are going to be there. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the other thing, is just trying to understand all the other robots. Like, just
tail of the tape.
Yeah, like
We've got to like learn about some of the pressing opponents that we may end up facing. We've faced some pretty big names before. First event, faced and beat Evan Arias Shreddit Bro. Very fun fight. Second event, we ended up doing really well against Caldera, and there's a good chance we might have won. Not guaranteed. Caldera's a very scary robot. It's very, very good. But we were pretty much in control of the fight until our battery died.
I think that's part of just getting the confidence that you can actually win these matches because like once you realize that it's possible, then it's not as intimidating or scary when you realize like, yeah, anything can happen. Doesn't matter. That's why I know you don't ever really tap out. You basically go to the end on every match.
It's that, but also the fact that I just kind of like to see the other robot get like a full knockout. It's just more aesthetically pleasing, and to me at least, it's like for the other robot to get like a full knockout. Like wait 10 seconds, it's a little more impressive. Every party involved is happier. It looks more impressive. I only tap out if it's like the robot is a steaming pile of TPU and gears and nuts and bolts and such.
Well,
and they are continuing to hit it, and each hit is costing us $20.
Well, you might have that chance.
Perhaps.
You might. But we'll see what happens at finals. But I mean, honestly, for my opinion, I think that Dimachaerus is going to be a force to be reckoned with. So, again, people might underestimate. So you never know. But I'm really excited to see what you do at finals, Beckett, and obviously wish you the best of luck. So again, I'll talk about it, a bunch on this episode, but like finals is coming, and if you're not tuned into finals, then I don't know what anybody else is doing. You got to watch finals. It's going to be awesome. But we've got more to come in this episode, talking to Corey and Donald Sung from Team Pandamonium. So everybody stay tuned. And welcome back for the final segment of this episode. And I'm really excited because, I mean, everybody knows that I'm a big Team Pandamonium stan as it is. And so I have Donald Sung and Corey Nason here with me to talk about their event for September, which, you know, I would say overall, I think seemed to go pretty well. But welcome both of you to the show and this episode, and I'm excited to talk about September.
Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure to be on the outside of the box podcast. Thank you for having us.
Yes, definitely. So as you know, I think any of us could have predicted September was a very exciting event. And, you know, in the 12s and 30s, I don't think we're any exception to that. Now, Donald, you've never been on my show before, so I'll actually give you the opportunity to talk about the 12 pounds first.
Of course.
I mean, I know one of the things that was consistently said for this event was that it was like one of the most competitive 12-pound fields that we've seen. And I definitely would say that that was the case. I mean, you know, what did you think kind of coming into it before anything really happened?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, I think as you get closer to the end of the year, the events get more competitive and more competitive as people try to really sneak into those qualifying spots. And for me, this was the first event, NHRL event I've attended. So I honestly didn't have too many expectations going in. I didn't change too much. And you might have noticed that Ariel's been running downpour since the June event, which was a fun thing to support and see happen in the team. But yeah, overall, I mean, didn't quite make it for a personal result, but overall, I think it was a pretty good showing, and maybe we'll see a little improvement for October if I can manage to sneak in there. We'll see. At the back of the wait list for now.
Yeah, that part is always a challenge. And it's funny in hindsight, you know, originally my intent was for like effectively what this event was originally supposed to be in August to be my first foray into 12s. And
Mhm.
I'm kind of glad that it didn't happen at this one, because I think that would have been a pretty scary lineup to go against. You know, what did you think of kind of the bots that were there in the end? I mean, I think what Liam put together was obviously like super impressive, and a really great win for him. But just like, what were your thoughts on the people who were kind of there in the end?
Yeah, I think what top four was Buzzkill, Hooligan, I believe Creature, and Blue Marlin, right? Yeah, it was certainly interesting, especially considering the fact that I fought three out of the four top four bots. I fought Creature and Hooligan both in qualifying rounds, and then you know, fought Blue Marlin in quarterfinals, right? Top eight. Um, so yeah, it was certainly an interesting event, and it was actually really awesome to see Buzzkill take it in the end because I fought Liam last year, Torrent versus Buzzkill, and the amount of improvement that seems to have gone into that bot from when it was sitting idle while he's been working on I forget his hammer saw bot name, um but yeah, that thing looked menacing. Yeah, Bumble Blitz, that's right. So yeah, it was really awesome to see how that happened. And you know, in a way, it was like a relief that all the bots that I fought ended up in top four. It's like, you know, if things went a little different, I could have kind of maybe been up there too. And you know, if there's another chance, then maybe we'll make it happen.
Yeah, for sure. And lastly, I wanted to ask you too, because I mean, I think that, you know, obviously with you know, Ariel running downpour and stuff like that, there was already kind of like a tie-in with Pandamonium. But I think, at least for me, I didn't realize that you were like, you know, kind of really part of the team until this event.
Right.
Is that exciting for you to, I mean, like Pandemonium's just such an amazing dynamic team. I mean, just like all
Mhm.
across the board, amazing builders. So what is it for you like being part of the team?
Yeah, it's a great honor to be a part of the team. I mean, it would have been nice to be up at an NHRL event with them earlier in the year. Um, Actually, I'm sure a lot of people don't know, but I joined the team right after championships in 2023. Um, I competed all of 2023 by myself, and I kind of missed having a team and kind of like that support group where I can bounce ideas off, support each other, help each other out. So that's what I wanted, and for the fit that I was looking for, I think Pandemonium fit that best, and you know they have an excellent image and awesome results as a team. So it was very exciting to join. Unfortunately, due to not being able to having to travel from North Carolina and stuff was a little challenging, which is why I sent up Downpour first, so to speak. But now I'm up in Massachusetts. I recently moved up about a month ago, so you should see me a lot more often in the Northeast events and representing Team Pandemonium.
Awesome. Now, Corey, we know that obviously the journey with Synthesis 30. Before we talk about how that bot did at this event, just briefly, I want to touch on the day with Derange, because honestly, like, I know when you first showed me the idea for the bot and like kind of some early things before you took it to a competition, I was really excited because I think it's a really cool like design, and I wanted to see what it can do. Now, how, obviously like it didn't go like far or anything like that, but how did you feel about its performance at September?
So the idea of Derange is to kind of take everything that I've learned with Synthesis and kind of throw it out the window. Synthesis uses a very conventional drive. It's a big old disc, four-wheel drive, and it's kind of boxy. I was starting to get that kind of burnout of always looking at the same robot. I myself, I like to continuously try to design new things to keep my skills sharp. There's a robot called Shook. It's the designer of what's Calypso, the one at Face Offs. He designed Shook, which effectively was a meme of if you took just the front half of Hypershock and you turned it into a robot. I thought it was a cool idea, but the robot kind of fell off the face of the earth. And I asked Josh, I said, what happened to the robot? He says it was just kind of too much to maintain. I said, oh, would it be cool if I kind of made a 3 pound version using some aspects of the design while incorporating pieces of my own? It's definitely a fun robot. It's more of drive first, weapon second, even though the weapon is pretty heavy. With any robot, it always has its teething issues. I had 2 matches. The first one was against an all TPU FingerTech beater bar. The robot hit really, really hard. It drove really well. The issue was I hit their side guard, and the weapon effectively just pulled the side guard into the weapon, and because it was so big and bulky, I flipped upside down because of the reaction of the weapon, and I was high centered on the actual wheel guard. I was upset about this, but I mean, after I had a chance to cool down, I had to just kind of get my mind clear and get ready for the second match. The second match was a SSP kid. Um, their control bots are generally always hard to drive around. He ultimately just outdrove me. Deranged will definitely come back for the last October and also Boxomania. I kind of want to focus on robots I know have no teething issues and whatnot. And so the range, it will be back. It's on the shelf for right now. I do want to try to focus more on the robots that will be going to finals. It's definitely an interesting robot, but it will be back.
Well, that's awesome. I'll be happy to see it back once that happens. Now, Synthesis 30, I know like you've put a lot of work into that robot, and certainly like any version of Synthesis, I think is always has the potential to be a killer. And in this particular case, you had a really good day against a very tough field. I mean, when you have that the other three in the top four are Yahoo, Megatron, and Hurricane, I'd say that's a pretty good day. So kind of talk a little bit about Synthesis 30's day at September NHRL.
So going into this event, I had some hope that the robot could perform. It's been to probably about 4 events, and every event it's always been some other issues. Whether it's the drive motors burning out, the weapon not being able to spin up properly. I understand I'm kind of asking a lot considering how large the disc is, and so it was just getting frustrating to the point where I kept asking myself after each event where it would go 0 and 2. Oh, like at teams, it went 0 and 3. And so I kept, do I really want to keep pushing at this? Do I really want to keep pushing at it? Um, after after sitting down after the previous event, I said, okay, I do. I don't, with Synthesis 3, it took me a while to physically get it to where it is today. So it doesn't make sense for me to kind of give up too prematurely for the 30 pounder. Going into this event, the drive was feeling solid. That was kind of always the issue. And the weapon, it got up to speed. My very first match was against Kazaa, I think it's 21 pounds. Effectively, I know he wants to run 2 of them, but I think he was having electrical issues. And so it was one, but nonetheless, big flamethrower, and Synthesis is always a plastic robot, so it's not always the most ideal type of opponent I want to go against. However, my thought process was uh, as you scale up the plastic, there's more thermal mass, so it takes more heat and more flame to deform the plastics. I did have some gold tape that worked really well, so I recommend it for anyone going up against a flamethrower robot. I put it on the vital areas and put the robot in. The weapon never stopped. It got up to the full speed within a second or two, and the drive never kicked out. Um, it was a very fun match. It's effectively that Kazaz sits so low to the ground. I want to say it's less than 2 inches tall, and even the sides are very low to the ground where his ground clearance isn't the best. But it was difficult for me to get full purchase on his robot. However, effectively, when you hit something enough, you start to dent things. At one point, I used his robot like a ramp, and I landed on top of him. And my disc, even though I was on top of him, it actually reaches below the chassis. So I started hitting the top of his top plate and started denting it a little bit. And then I backed off, and I noticed when I launched over him, I believe I got to one side and I actually dented in the sidewalls into the wheels on one side, which now he's crab walking against the wall, and now I'm able to get nice shots on the other side, and I dented both sides of the frame in and I cut through the back plate. So effectively he was knocked out. The fact that that robot drove for, I don't remember the length of the match, drove the entire time, and the weapon spun the entire time. And even for Synthesis, the way I design it is the weapon disc can reach behind the robot. So if it pops backwards, the disc effectively can pop it back. And the 30 does the exact same thing. So it's cool to see kind of similar characteristics between the 3 pounder and the 30 pounder. So that was a knockout. So that was great. Going into my second match, it was against Two Stroke. I don't want to ever say someone is going to be an easy match. However, I believe this was like the first real time he's spun up the weapon within minutes before our match, and his drive wasn't on par. So going into this, I already made a gentleman's agreement because I'm not a fan of let's kick them while they're down. Let's just keep destroying them, because I've been in that spot too, where it's like you cause so much unnecessary damage to the opponent. It's like I've had to repair damage to my robot when I wasn't moving, and they just kept hitting me before I could tap out. So I already told him, I said, effectively, if you get stranded or you stop moving, I'm not going to hit you. And he was cool with that. The funny part was, I drove at him. I was playing it cautious, and then he got the weapon up. I wanted to kind of see what a weapon to weapon hit would be like. I went at a kind of an angle, and he actually hit one of my weapon belts. So if I wasn't careful enough, he could have actually have hit both weapon belts, and I would have been down a weapon. That would have been very comical, but luckily I got to the side of him, and I just got one charging hit at him. It tossed him on the wall, and I said, okay, I don't want to hit him anymore. He's not, even if he gets off the wall, he was pretty damaged. Funny enough, though, he made a post in the Discord to where the house robot actually did more damage to him than I did. But yeah, no, after that match, after that hit, I kind of drove back to my corner and I let him figure it out, because he did say after everything, he does want to take the internal combustion engine. He wants to put it on a robot that's less thrown together and more engineered. And I thought that was a cool idea. And I don't really want to destroy the possibly one motor he has. So that was two knockouts. So now I think I want to say this was about 4:30, 5 o'clock. And so I'm sitting there. Robot's not really touched. I mean, flamethrower, the only thing damage that I sustained was one of the belts stretched a little bit because of the heat, and then I just had to replace the other belt because of two-stroke hitting it. So going into the next match, I find I'm fighting Chicken, Al Rucker, and Synthesis is great. It has the big reach, but I don't ever really design like configurations. Like I want to make this cool wedge, but I never do for whatever reason. So going into it, I already knew I had a disadvantage because he's a horizontal. His horizontal's really has big reach. So I was nervous. Like I said, about 4:30, 5 o'clock, I found out I was fighting him. Our match wasn't until about 7:30. So like 2.5 hours. I'm panicking. Like I'm so nervous. And the funny part is generally I'm the cool, calm, and collected. And at events, Ariel's like, oh, I want to throw up. And I tell Ariel, relax. So it was funny. She was like, you're nervous? I said, yeah, I'm nervous. And then she was like, the tables have turned. So going into this match, Hal seemed a little nervous. I mean, I'm a really big vertical spinner. Not that it has the pedigree, but nonetheless, you can never like overlook your opponent. And he's a big horizontal. So I said, okay, this is the do or die match. Right now, we were in the top 8. It was Megatron versus Kazaa, Warhard versus Hurricane, Red Storm versus Yahoo, and me versus Chicken. Effectively, I needed to win this next match in order to qualify. And I was feeling the pressure. We're really feeling the pressure, but went into the match, spun it up, and I wanted to see kind of what Hal would do. Hal came, he went to one side, the mini ball went to the other. So I kind of went towards the mini bot and I hooked back and I just let it rip. And I went in, he went flying, I went flying. Synthesis does what does, it pops back on its wheels. I think we did about 2 more big hits. After the third big hit, I think he hit me to where my belts kind of crossed over and it bound up the weapon. And I bent his blade. It's wouldn't even fit on camera. There's not a single like it's probably, I don't know, probably 2 feet, at least 2 to 3 feet long. There's not a single inch that is a flat aspect. It's like wavy like this. It's bent in the like a banana, and it's also twisted. So it's very cool to kind of see, like, you can kind of have an idea where it was hit and how it transferred all the shock loads in. So when I bent his blades down, it hit him and he flipped upside down. I'm on my nose because generally, if the blade is spinning, it'll pop me back. But I was perched perfectly on the nose, and right now I'm panicking because if the house robot can't get me off my face, Hal was upside down, but he can still drive, so he's driving towards the edge of the wall, and he's almost just about to tip over, like to get back on his wheel. So I look at the house robot. I'm like, unstick me, hit me hard, ram me, you do whatever it took to get me over. And sure enough, they got me over. What I found out was the actual hub that the wheel mounts to the shaft, it deformed enough to where it was slipping. So at the end, you could see I only have one side to drive. Both wheels, like the both drive motors, work, but the one on the right side, the shaft was effectively just spinning inside of the wheel. So I'm doing whatever I can just to stay in the match. And sure enough, the countdown came. Cal got counted out. I had no, like, the emotions were took over everything. Like, I had, like, at the end of the match, it was almost like I didn't believe it. I was like, I just qualified with the 30 pounder, and it didn't seem real. And then Lindsay was like, come over, come on, come on. And then I was like, I basically told the same story. I felt like I felt so sick to my stomach right up until the robot went in the cage and I had nothing left. It was do or die. That match was fun. And then going into Yahoo, well, first off, this was, I mean, I've known Chad for years. It's been probably about 9 or 10 years that I've been in the sport. And I've known Chad and Pete for a long time. I've known them probably for about maybe 6+ years. And I've fought Pete one time in the 12s, but I've never fought Chad. So I knew this was already going to be, it was going to be a fun match. I didn't really care what happened at this point. I qualified. And I was just rushing to get the robot together. It drove, the weapon spun up. We both get in the cage. I spin it up. He kind of approaches slowly. I make a big mistake. I kind of drive past him and I turn to face him. However, big vertical disc has a lot of gyro. So when I started to turn, I lifted up. He countered, he hit me, and it popped me back. Now, this was the coolest part of the whole match. The disc had so much power, it dug into the kick plate. It popped it up about like 3 feet. And then the disc came around again and it grabbed through the first layer of Lexian and it hit the second layer and it threw my robot into the ceiling and it came down. One of the other things Synthesis likes to do is it likes to destroy its like weapon system. And when I came down, the disc hit the gearbox and motor and it ripped half of it out of the robot. So I didn't have a weapon, but it's no problem. The robot was still driving. So I'm going to try to push him. Now, Chad gets around me, pushes me up. It was kind of funny. He got underneath me. He peeled my bottom plate back just enough, and he hit my weapon ESC, which like shut the robot off. And then I was dead in the water. But I mean, I didn't care how that match went. If I won, that would have been awesome. It would have been cool. I would have had a chance to fight JMO. But I'm so happy for them. Like, I like to see like Chad always doing well. But overall, I couldn't have asked for a better event like Synthesis 30. Like, going from all the frustrations to actually seeing it drive, seeing the weapon spin, it gave me new life into I love the idea of the big vert. So I have it registered for October. I'm really hoping it gets in. It's second on the wait list. I do have a couple of experimental things that I want to try because going into finals, I look at the list and I'm just shaking in my boots. But I mean, you don't you just don't casually stroll into finals. So I mean, I had to have done something. So I think I should be able to hang with the best.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Well, I know, Corey, that you'll be at October regardless because you have a 3-pound entry, but hopefully the 30 gets in as well, just so that you can get a little bit more time to practice with it and make sure that it's good to go for finals. So hopefully you both get off of the wait list and are able to kind of see how things go there, because Team Pandamonium needs to represent at finals. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and Corey, like you said to me, hopefully you don't do too well with the 3, or you're going to need extra people to help at finals.
I mean, I've done two robots at finals. I want to say like 1 or 2 times. It's manageable. The robot for October is kind of I don't want to burn myself out, so I'm trying something totally different. And I want to have a blast. I mean, putting a face on a robot is always a fun time. But I'm not making it as a way I want to be super competitive. I'm making something to have fun and be destructive. However, if it wins, fingers crossed, that'd be cool. But I mean, I'm going to need like all of Panda just to help me with just my 3 robots. Let alone, I know Panda's doing really well as far as qualifying for finals.
Yeah, exactly. So everybody's going to need all hands on deck for finals to make sure that everybody can do their best at that. Well, I'm looking forward to October, to see how that goes, and we can see how the bots do, and then finals will be right around the corner. So everybody better be prepared for that. Well, thank you both for talking about how September went for you, and for those that are watching, please make sure that you like, subscribe, share, comment. Make sure you watch the October event, and if you didn't already watch the September event, it's on YouTube. You can go back and do that and check out all of the great matches. But keep supporting combat robotics, and we will see everybody next time on the show.